Something I've alluded to in a few other videos is the fact that the order and the way that you list things is important. It's important to figure out the priority and the importance of specific projects and contexts in your folders within OmniFocus. And some of the reason for that is because there are some areas within OmniFocus when you're working on tasks that having that order in place can be used as an advantage to make it easier for you to decide what to work on. And something I've found is the more resistance I can remove in a process for myself in deciding what comes next, the more likely I am to actually follow through on it. As a knowledge worker, I know that it's something that I'm always fighting is procrastination. So the more ways I can get rid of my restrictions to doing something, the better off that I'm going to be. So the way that I start with this is with projects. And if you start at the highest level with the folder structure over here, you see the guidance folder, then you step into the areas of responsibility, and then there's a few meta type folders that I have underneath of those. And the reason that they're in the order that they are is that to me, the guidance projects are more important than the areas of responsibility. If I'm going to be looking at my list of projects, I want to see the tasks and the projects that help me set direction on the remainder of the projects within my system. And then I want to go into the areas of responsibility, and I've ranked those in their importance to me. So it starts off with the spiritual, then it goes to myself, and then I'm a husband, and you can see how I go on down that list. And to me, those are in order of importance. And some of those are flexible on occasion. It's a bit tricky to get it exact, and it's probably not always correct, but it's at least pretty close. But once I get through those areas of responsibility, I step into singles, which is my list of single action projects. And those come after those areas of responsibility because to me, the actual projects within the areas of responsibility are more important than just one-off tasks. So if I have an actual multi-step project, to me, that takes priority over just a one-off. Then I go into ancillary, installed project, extra stuff and things that aren't moving at all. Those are typically only going to be looked at when I'm doing a review cycle, and I want to look at them after I look at my active stuff. And then you get into someday maybe lists, checklists, and templates, kind of placeholders. And if you look at all of these from, say, the review perspective, you would see these projects, if you're reviewing them all at once, you would see them in the list that you have these folders. And that's extremely helpful, and that's part of the reason I have guidance at the top. And then even within, if I go into this work folder and we see the list of projects that I have here, these are also in order of importance to me. So switching banks is more important to me than getting a Bookworm podcast out, just because I've got to be able to pay the bills, and I can't pay the bills if I don't get the banks switched. So to me, that would be more important. So these are also ranked here as well. Now, this also applies for the contexts. So if we go over to the context view, you can see that I've again got horizons at the top. I always want to look at those first. And then my list of contexts I have listed in order of importance to me. So I am very big on reading. I know that reading things is something that increases my mental capacity, and it's something that helps me learn quite a bit. So reading to me is towards the top. Then I go into learn, analog, and communicate and develop. I have these all in order to me as far as which ones I think are typically more important. And obviously, I've got MacBook Pro and iPhone towards the bottom. To me, working with the computer side of things, I can get a lot done with that. But ultimately, I know that typically those tasks are not something that's going to be as important or as essential to accomplishing what it is that I want to do in life. So they tend to be a little bit lower, which is a bit counter to what I typically do. So it's kind of hard to understand some of it unless you're the one putting it in place. But the important part here is that I've got these contexts in order where I think they're in order of importance to me. Now, where a lot of this can come to light and how you can actually see it is if we go over to the dashboard. So we've talked about the dashboard in the past, and I've flagged some things here just so we can see how this all pans out. But if you look at, say, the top, I've got these listed in the order of their context, and I know that typically my analog context is more important than the others. So that means that any tasks within the analog context come up first. So I should be able to, if I've got everything in order the way that I think the importance should be, I can come to this dashboard, just start at the top and work my way down. And it prevents the need to have to make a decision every single time I go on to another task. But once I get done with that analog task, then I go down to communicate. And in this case, I've got two different tasks here. And if you look at the projects underneath of those, Train John on soundboard and then the article that I'm writing, between those two, I have the project for the first above the one for the latter. So Train John and that article, if I go back over to the projects view, and I know that the Train John is here, and I know that that other article is down here, obviously you can see that the Train John project comes before the reading books article. So that would mean that the communicate task in the former comes first. And it's a little nebulous the way I explain that there, but ultimately you can see it here from the dashboard on the order that comes from those. And that would follow through with what I think is more important, because that church responsibility to me trumps what I'm doing at work. So that's how those end up in that order. Then you step down into MacBook Pro, just pretty simple. There's just one there. Then in after hours, I've got 3. And then this is where something like the neutralize project is ordered within itself. So to me, I know that watering the office plants is more important than turning the compost pile, just because I don't want to kill the plants. And the compost can always wait a couple days. And light bulbs always drive me crazy, so I don't want to deal with those. So those end up being put in that order for that reason. And sometimes it's because I don't want to do something. Sometimes it's just purely out of importance. But ultimately, if I keep my list of projects in order of importance and I keep my list of contacts in order of importance, I can get this list to a point where it's just a simple work from top to bottom and I'm done. Obviously, that doesn't always hold true. Sometimes it's a little flexible because things aren't always cut and dry like that. But using intuition, if I look at the next one, and usually I'm reviewing this list in the morning in its entirety, sometimes I know that some of them need to be moved around, and that's okay. Like, for example, I know that there are a couple cases where I've had a number of due items show up. So what I would do is go in here to the view and change my group actions to the due. And if I do that, in this particular case, it's going to show nothing. But just so we can see what this looks like, say I take that first one, and let's give it a due date of tomorrow. And now I've got that particular task. It is brought to the top. And just to go along with that, let's say the water office plants, I need to get that one done in a week. Now, I'm breaking some rules with my own ways of doing things here, but you can get the picture here. If I switch the dashboard to being grouped by the due date instead of by context, I now can see the ones that are vital to getting done because there's actually a due date on them, as opposed to the ones that I think are nice to have. And some people like to tweak the dashboard so that it shows this way. I could see the value of doing that. There are times when I run with it like this for a few days just because I've got a lot that's due, and it's kind of rare that that happens for me. So I can see the value of switching it to that, but all of that still comes through to the order of importance that I place on projects and context. And that's where the value of the dashboard and that order in combination with each other has a lot of value in allowing me to just work from top to bottom.